From July 1st, 1998 to January 20th, 1999, the NBA experienced a lockout that forced the regular season to be shortened to 50 games, and the All-Star Game to be cancelled. So I started thinking, if the NBA did hold an All-Star Game in 1999, who would have been the 24 players? Now, one important thing to note here is that I based my selections on the stats each player accumulated after all 50 games. In real life, the All-Star Game takes place in the middle of the regular season, so maybe I'm going about this the wrong way, but considering the entire 1999 season was pretty much a half season in and of itself, I don't think it's that big of a deal. Before we dive in, here are my honorable mentions. First up is David Robinson. The Admiral put up 15.8 points, 10 rebounds, 1.4 steals, and 2.4 blocks. He led the league in defensive rating, defensive plus-minus, and finished 4th in the Defensive Player of the Year voting. Stephon Marbury. Marbury certainly had all-star production with 21.3 points and 8.9 assists, but what keeps him off my list is how he played 18 games for the Timberwolves and then 31 for the Nets, a West team and an East team. Even if I did have this hypothetical all-star game take place in the middle of the 50-game season, his Minnesota numbers were less impressive than his numbers with New Jersey. Eddie Jones. Like Marbury, Jones played for 2 teams this season, the Lakers and the Hornets. He averaged 15.6 points, 3.9 rebounds, and 2.5 steals, and was named second team All-Defense. John Stockton. Although Stockton made 3rd team All-NBA and would most likely get into the real All-Star game based on reputation, his numbers this year were kinda tame. And lastly, Damon Stoudemire, Arvydas Sabonis, Brian Grant, Rasheed Wallace, and Isaiah Ryder. All 5 were members of the Portland Trail Blazers, who finished as the 2nd seed in the West. Although they all played great and worked well together, individually, no one quite stood out among the rest as a clear All-Star. This video is just supposed to be a bit of fun, so take what I say with a grain of salt. First up, here are the West All-Stars. The 2 starting guards are Gary Payton and Jason Kidd. The 2 starting forwards are Karl Malone and Tim Duncan, and starting at center is the Diesel, Shaquille O'Neal. Gary Payton continued his streak of being the best defensive point guard in the league, as he once again made first team All-Defense for the 6th year in a row. Something that often goes overlooked when talking about Gary Payton is his abilities as a playmaker. The Glove really was a great offensive player, with the ability to get his teammates a ton of open looks, and he actually finished 4th in the league in assists per game. He also made 2nd team All-NBA, and put up 21.7 points, 8.7 assists, and 2.2 steals. Speaking of playmaking, Jason Kidd led the NBA in assists this year, with 16.9 points, 10.8 assists, 6.8 rebounds, and 2.3 steals. Those 10.8 assists were his personal career high. Kidd was also named first team All-Defense, the first time he had ever made an All-Defense team in his career. He made first team All-NBA, he was a great pickpocket and assist machine, and he also led the league in triple-doubles. Karl Malone would end up taking home the 1999 MVP, with averages of 23.8 points, 9.4 rebounds, and 4.1 assists. The 98-99 season was the lowest scoring season in NBA history in the shot clock era. As a whole, teams averaged only 91.6 points per game. Much of the Jazz's scoring weight fell on Malone. Malone was also named first team All-Defense, as well as first team All-NBA. Tim Duncan would eventually lead the Spurs to the 1999 championship and take home his first Finals MVP. In the regular season, the big fundamental averaged 21.7 points, 11.4 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. Even though he was only in his sophomore season, Duncan was quickly establishing himself as one of the best players in the game. He was first team All-NBA, first team All-Defense, he finished 3rd in MVP voting, and 5th in Defensive Player of the Year voting. The final piece of the starting 5 is Shaquille O'Neal. It seems a little redundant to say this, but Prime Shaq is one of the most freakish things that people had ever seen. The Diesel was nearing the absolute peak of his career, with averages of 26.3 points and 10.7 rebounds, on a league-leading 57.6% from the field. He also led the league in total points scored, PER, plus-minus, and offensive win shares. Now, let's move on to the West bench. The first 5 West reserves are Nick Van Exel, Kobe Bryant, Sharif Abdur-Rahim, Chris Webber, and Antonio McDyess. Choosing another West guard was tricky, since no one really stood out above the rest, so I decided to give this spot to Nick the Quick Van Exel. The previous season, he had made his only career All-Star game as a member of the Los Angeles Lakers, but for the 99 season, he was a member of the Denver Nuggets. Van Exel was one of the quickest and most underrated flashy players of the 90s, as he had a lethal crossover, some great spin moves, and could dish out assists with the best of them. He averaged 16.5 points, points and 7.4 assists, and even dropped 41 points and 9 assists against the Lakers in a revenge game. Kobe Bryant had also made the 1998 All-Star game. With Van Exel and Eddie Jones no longer on the Lakers, this was Kobe's first season as a full-time starter. He averaged 19.9 points, 5.3 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 1.4 steals, and 1 block. Some of you might not know who this next guy is, but for my backup small forward spot, I'm going with the Vancouver Grizzlies' Sharif Abdur-Rahim. He was a 6'9" forward who was a good mid-range shooter, a monster one-handed dunker, and a great post player with some deadly spin moves around the rim. Although the Grizzlies finished with an 8-42 record, Sharif showed legit talent with 23 points, 7.5 rebounds, 3.4 assists, 1.4 steals, and 1.1 blocks. In his first season with the Sacramento Kings, Chris Webber put up 20 points, 13 rebounds, 4.1 assists, and 2.1 blocks. He led the league in rebounds per game, he was second-team All-NBA, and since this was also Jason Williams' rookie season, we saw some epic highlights between White Chocolate and C-Web. The underrated Antonio McDyess had himself an epic season with 21.2 points, 10.7 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks. For the 1999 season, the traditional 6'9" power forward was moved to the center position for all 50 games. This was during McDyess's prime years with the Denver Nuggets. Along with Shaq and Tim Duncan, McDyess was the only player to finish this season in the top 10 for points per game and in the top 10 for rebounds per game. He also earned a third-team All-NBA selection this year. The final two reserves for the West are Hakeem Olajuwon and Kevin Garnett. Hakeem had the last All-Star worthy season of his career in 1999, with 18.9 points, 9.6 rebounds, and 2.5 blocks. He also made All-NBA third team. And then there's Kevin Garnett, who put up 20.8 points, 10.4 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.7 steals, and 1.8 blocks. He also made third team All-NBA. Lastly, the head coach for the West is the Spurs' Greg Popovich. Now, we move on to the East All-Stars. The two starting guards are Tim Hardaway and Allen Iverson. The starting forwards are Grant Hill and Keith Van Horn, and starting at center is Alonzo Mourning. Tim Hardaway crossed his way over to 17.4 points, 7.3 assists, 3.7 rebounds, and 1.2 steals, which earned him a spot on the All-NBA second team. He even finished second among all players in three-pointers made, with 112. If the All-Star game really did take place this year, then this most likely would have been Allen Iverson's first ever selection. The answer put up 26.8 points, 4.9 rebounds, 4.6 assists, and 2.3 steals. He led the league in points per game, he was first team All-NBA, third in steals per game, and finished fourth in MVP voting. With Michael Jordan now out of the NBA, it looked more and more like Grant Hill was set to become the new face of the league. He had made 4 straight All-Star games in his first 4 seasons, and most likely would have continued the trend this year as he put up 21.1 points, 7.1 rebounds, 6 assists, and 1.6 steals. He made second team All-NBA, and in a game against the Washington Wizards, Hill dropped 46 points, his personal career high in scoring. For this next spot, some of you might be asking, Keith Van Horn? Really? Yeah, but let me just say that picking forwards from the East was much harder than it was picking forwards from the West. Van Horn put up 21.8 points, 8.5 rebounds, 1 steal, and 1.3 blocks. He was 5th in points per game, 12th in free throw percentage, and even finished 9th in usage rate. He averaged the most points of his career, and what's even crazier is that he nearly blocked the most shots of his career. In 2000, Van Horn blocked a career best 60 shots in 80 games. In 1999, he blocked 53 shots in only 42 games. Alonzo Mourning had arguably the best season of his career in 1999, as he made first team All-NBA, first team All-Defense, and took home his first ever Defensive Player of the Year trophy with 20.1 points, a career best 11 rebounds, and a career best 3.9 blocks. The first 5 East reserves are Rod Strickland, Ray Allen, Vince Carter, Sean Kemp, and Dikembe Mutombo. The 6'3" point/shooting guard Rod Strickland has become somewhat underrated over the years. He has a case for being one of the best players to never make an All-Star game, as he was a good passer, he could finish around the rim with acrobatic layups, and he had some good handles. In 1998, he led the NBA in assists with 10.5 per game. In 1999, Strickland put up 15.7 points, 9.9 assists, 4.8 rebounds, and 1.7 steals as a member of the Washington Wizards. Ray Allen put up 17.1 points, 4.2 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and 1.1 steals. Choosing guards from the East was also a little trickier, but I'm going with Jesus Shuttleworth as my backup shooting guard. Am I putting rookie Vince Carter in mostly for clout? Yeah, but hey, it's the All-Star game. We need a guy who can play basketball with some style. It certainly did not take long for the rookie Vince Carter to do exciting stuff on the court. For the 1999 season, he put up 18.3 points, 5.7 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.1 steals, 1.5 blocks, and he ended up winning Rookie of the Year. Shawn Kemp's years in Cleveland in the late 90s don't often get talked about, but he was still producing good numbers with 20.5 points, 9.2 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.1 steals, and 1.1 blocks. His 20.5 points was the highest per game average of his career, and this was also the final season Kemp received any votes in the Most Valuable Player of the Year voting. Dikembe Mutombo had another great defensive season with 10.8 points, 12.2 rebounds, and 2.9 blocks. He was second team all defense, he was first in total rebounds, fourth in blocks, and he finished second in Defensive Player of the Year voting. The final two reserves for the East are Kendall Gill and Reggie Miller. Miller had himself another solid season with 18.4 points, 2.7 rebounds, and 2.2 assists, while shooting a league-leading 91.5% from the free throw line. The 6'5" Kendall Gill played as a small forward for the New Jersey Nets in 1999. He put up 11.8 points, 4.9 rebounds, and a league-leading 2.7 steals. In a game against the Miami Heat, Gill racked up 11 steals, which is tied for the record of most steals in an NBA game, which Kendall shares with Larry Keenan. And finally, the head coach for the East is the Heat's Pat Riley. Do you think I did a pretty good job drafting the 1999 All-Star Game? Let me know in the comments. Take care.